Hello, everyone. My name is Jesus Nava. I'm the Director of Client Training and Education here at TradeStation. And for me, it's a pleasure to be here with all of you to talk about this series, Learning TradeStation. Today's topic is chart analysis and strategy trading. In today's class, which is dedicated to chart analysis and strategy trading, we're going to talk about these objectives. First of all, we'll show you how to edit symbols, how to edit the time frame, and the history loaded on the chart. We're going to understand the chart types, use some drawing tools, how to add studies and enable alerts, use multi-data chart analysis. Then we're going to jump into backtesting strategy components and how you can understand the strategy performance report. So there's a lot of information to cover today, and let me just get to it right away. Before I do so, here are some important disclosures. Keep in mind that every symbol and idea that I talk about here today is for educational or demonstration purposes, and they're not recommendations of TradeStation. Everyone here should be aware that online trading is not suitable for everyone, and it should only be done with risk capital, especially when it comes to options which carry a high degree of risk. All right, let's get started. I'm going to jump over here to my TradeStation platform. I have nothing opened because I wanted to use this opportunity to show you where to go to open up a chart. It's the first thing that I'm going to explain. At the top of TradeStation, we click on the Chart Analysis button. If it's the first time that you open up a TradeStation chart analysis, you're going to see that there's a default symbol and there's a default time frame. I didn't have to specify anything. I just went to the apps bar, clicked on chart analysis, and I have a chart open. So let me go ahead and resize this app so that it uses the whole screen area. All right, here we go. And you're going to notice that at the top of the chart analysis window, you're going to have a set of tools that allow you to edit and customize the chart in any possible way. We're going to go through some of those menus and try to show you how you can, customize the chart to be the way that you want it to be. The first thing that I'm going to talk about is how to maneuver around the chart. What I like to do on my chart analysis window is to use the up arrow key and the down arrow key on my keyboard. It's very useful because notice what happens when I press the up arrow key several times. You can see how the chart is going to expand, and I can see more detail on the candles. Now, if you want the opposite to happen, if you want the chart to compress and you are able to see more of the historical data, you press the down arrow key on the keyboard several times, and you'll see that every time you press it, it'll compress the chart even more. You're also going to notice that if I compress the chart a lot, there's some black area right here on the right-hand side of my chart, this area right here. The reason why this happens is because there's not enough historical data loaded on the chart. So if you compress the candles all together, you're going to see this black area appear on the right-hand side. Now, it's very easy to fix, and the way you do that is by loading more historical data. So the first thing that I'm going to explain to you is how to load historical data, and I'll show you the shortcut that I use all the time, which is doing a keyboard command. A lot of times, if you want to change things on a chart, the best way is to use your keyboard and type in the command. And a command can be a historical request. You can tell by just looking at this chart that there's about 5 days of trading activity. Now, how can I tell? Because every day that the session ends, there's this session break. It's a dotted line that goes up on the chart, and it's a vertical line, and it divides the chart into different trading sessions. So I can count them, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we're in the 6th day, which is today's trading activity, which is loading at the time. But if I want to load more data, I just type it in. I'm going to type in 30 space days. One of the nice things about TradeStation is that when you use your keyboard, it recognizes your keyboard entry, and a command line shows up right here in the middle of the screen. It shows up automatically. You don't have to click anywhere. You just start typing, and it comes up. You can see that right there inside the box, I typed in 30 days. So if I hit enter, it'll give me 30 days of historical data. In fact, I'm going to use the scroll bar down here on my chart. I'm going to scroll all the way back. and I can see the very first trading day. If I want to know the date of this section that I see here on the far left, I need to bring up what's called the tooltips. And you bring it up by clicking on the background and holding your mouse button. Now, if you click on the candles accidentally and you hold, you'll see that nothing shows up. So for the little window with data to show up, you have to click on the background and hold. And that gives you the data tips window, giving you detailed information about the candle, where the vertical axis is. While on the chart and holding, you can just move your mouse around and go to the chart or the very first candle of the chart. So let me go ahead and press the up arrow key to expand the view. All right. A lot of the styling of the chart, let's say that you want to change the candlesticks and you want to change them to regular open, high, low, close bars. Right here at the top of the chart, there's a style button allowing you to change from a candle to a candle with trend, open, high, low, close, or a line. So these are 4 styles. It just changes the way that the graph looks. By default, TradeStation uses candlesticks in a red and green format. So if you see a red candle, it's a down candle. And if you see a green candle, it's an up candle, meaning that it closed higher than it opened. That's an up candle. Now, if the closing price is lower than the price that it opened at, it's going to turn red. Okay, it's a down candle. Perfect. So let's go ahead and change the time frame. Right here at the top, we also have a toolbar button that allows you to change the time frame very quickly. If you click here, you'll see some of the most frequently used time intervals. It's just a matter of clicking this drop down and selecting, let's say we want to do a 60-minute bar, and then we have a 60-minute chart right there. Or if you want to go to the drop down and select the daily chart, we can also do that, and this is the daily chart of the symbol that you have right here on the top left corner. So if I want to change this to, let's say I want to see the historical price activity of Apple, I just type it in, AAPL. You can see that as soon as I start typing, the command line shows up in the middle of the screen. I hit the enter key, and this is the chart of Apple. All right, let's take a look at some other things here in charting. We talked about, entering the symbol, changing the time frame, or loading historical data. You also can double click on the actual candles to take you to what's called a customized symbol. I can double click on the candle. It takes you to this customized symbol dialog, which pretty much has those same settings. So if you go to the settings here, you can change the symbol right here in the symbol box. You can select the data interval, or you can just load more historical data down here on this section that's titled the range. So all those things that I did using the keyboard command, you can also double click on the candle. I'll do that one more time. And it takes you to the format or the customized symbol, allowing you to do the same thing. By the way, right here at the top, you may also go to data and edit the symbol, and it'll take you to the exact same dialog. Rob, if you're looking at candlestick with trend, and this is something that I'll explain very quickly. If I go over here to the Style tab and I select Candle with Trend, you can see how the colors change. A filled candle is a down candle, and a hollow candle, or one that is empty, is an up candle. Filled and hollow. Filled down, hollow up. We're going to apply a color based on what the closing price is in relationship to the prior bar. So if the candle closed higher than the previous closing, then you're going to be green. But if it closed lower than the previous close, it's going to be red. On the candlestick with trend, let me go back there to style. On the candle, regular candle, green is up, red is down. But on the other one, candlestick with trend, we look at filled and hollow. A hollow red one, if you're pointing to a hollow red one, that means that it's an up candle, which means that it closed higher than it's open. It's an up candle. But if you look at the closing price of that candle, it's lower than the closing price of the prior candle, and that's why it's painted red. Let's go ahead and take a look at some other concepts here, understand some of the chart types. There's different ways in which you can build candlesticks in TradeStation. For the most part, or the most common ones are the time-based. So when you think about a daily chart, that's a time-based chart because every candle represents one day of activity. If you're looking at minutes, let's say a 5-minute, every candle represents the activity for 5 minutes. Now, when you go to the ticks interval, let's say that we open up a 25 tick chart. A 25 tick chart is a chart that is made up of 25 trades. Look at Apple right here. Every time that Apple trades 25 times, you're gonna see a new candle, and that's the way that this chart is built, based on how many trades occur. Now, there's another type of chart right here in the Style tab, which is a volume-based chart. If I go over here and I select 500,000 shares, all right, this is 50,000 shares, which means that every time that Apple trades 50,000 shares, you're also going to see a candle. When you look at activity charts, these are going to be sensitive to volume. So the more volume there is for a particular symbol, the more candles or the more bars you're going to see. Different than a time frame or a time-based chart that every candle represents the same amount of time. An activity is based on how active the particular security is. Let's go ahead and change the style of this chart back to candle. And there's other types of charts that I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but if you go to style, we have charts that are based on price movement, like Kagi, line break, point and figure, Renko, case, momentum, and range. There's a lot of information on the web about each one of these chart types. TradeStation did not come up with these terms. These are general terms out there in the chart analysis world. And you can search, with any search engine for information about each one of these and how to interpret them. And we've incorporated these types of charts into TradeStation so you can use them. One of the most popular ones is point and figure because it's been around for ages. But there's other ones that are not so frequently used. If you use that, a Renko chart. A Renko chart is the type of chart where you specify a brick size. So I've set my brick to 1 point. You can see the squares flush to the left-hand side, and that's because I don't have enough historical data. So I'm going to go to the data, edit the symbol, and I'm going to say load 10 days back. I'm going to click OK. Okay, this is the chart going back 10 days. Apple has been down for the last 10 days. And what these charts do, the price movement charts, is that they filter out a lot of the noise that happens in the market. And you're not basing the drawing of the chart on a specific time period, but you're basing it strictly on price movement. If the price moves, you're going to see something on the chart. So take a look at a lot of the information that's on the web about these chart types. If you want to learn about the chart types on our help, right here, I'm going to go to help, get help, platform trading. You can go to the index and type in Renko up here, and you can see that we have topics on pretty much anything on TradeStation. These are the Renko charts, and it explains how the bars are built and how you can take advantage of them. So feel free to go to the help. I'm pretty sure you're going to find great information on how to use those charts. Let me go back to my daily chart. All right, this is my daily chart of Apple. Someone asked about the price scale. Let me go ahead and create a monthly chart of Apple. All right, this is a monthly chart of Apple. And I want you to take a look at the scale right here on the right-hand side. You see how the distance between 20 and 40 is exactly the same as 100 and 120? Even though there's 20 points from 100 to 120, and there's 20 points from 20 to 40, when you think about the percentage required for that price change, it's totally different. Because for the stock to go from $20 to 40, it had to have changed 100%. 100% increase in price would take you to 40. But if the price is $100, for it to go to 120, we're only talking about a 20% increase. So when you talk about percentages, you know that the price movement is totally different. How do you change the scale here? I'm going to format the symbol or customize the symbol. So I'm just going to double click on the candle. And there's a scaling tab. And you can do a lot of things here to the scaling. But one of the things is I can change the type from linear to semi-log. So when I do that and I click OK, take a look at what happens to the price data of Apple. Now the movement between 20 and 40, you see how it's bigger than the movement from 100 to 120 because it's accounting for the percentage change. And when you want to analyze, the percent movement of your portfolio, this is the best way to look at a security long term. If you're looking at short term, you may not see a difference because the price doesn't change that much. But when you go back years, this is a chart going back to the year 2000 where prices, change significantly. Sometimes looking at a percent change scale makes a lot of difference. Let's talk a little bit about drawing tools. The drawings are all available right here in the drawing toolbar at the top of the chart. And you find things as horizontal line, vertical line, the Fibonacci retracement lines. These are all available from the drawing menu. If you are the type of TradeStation user that draws many times, you can enable what's called a drawing toolbar. I'm going to come over here to this little drop down at the very end of the toolbar, and I'm going to click on Customize. Then I'm going to click on Toolbars, and notice over here on the right there's a chart drawing tools. And as soon as I check it, if you look over here on the left-hand side, we have all the drawing toolbars enabled on the left side of my chart, which is convenient. So if you draw a lot on the chart, it's going to make it very easy for you to click on one of the tools here. I'm going to apply the changes, and notice that as you hover over them, it'll tell you what the tool does, okay? Let's go ahead and click on one of these tools, for example, a horizontal line. When you click on the horizontal, you can just click on the chart once, and that gives you a horizontal line. Let me go ahead and change my scale to linear. And I'm going to change the time frame to daily. All right, let's go ahead and... When you change the chart, you can see how the line also stays there. So let me move the line up. Okay, and the line is exactly at 156.46. If you want to change that price that shows up there, you can click and drag the line to a different price. Or sometimes I double click on the line and I go to the data tab and I change the price right here. Let's say that I want to set the price at 155.00. Just type in the price. I click OK. And the line moves to that specific price. Not sure if you noticed, but when you double click on the line, you also have the ability to change the style. You can change the thickness, you can change the color, or you can even turn on an alert. So if you're looking to set up a price alert very quickly, horizontal lines, very simple to do. You just put a check where it says enable alert and then click OK. This is the line where I set up an alert so that if the price activity right now at 161 drops to 155, I'm going to be alerted. Or what I've shown you for the horizontal line, you can also do it for the trend line. So let's say that I click on trend line. Click it. I can click where the trend line starts, and I can click where the trend line ends. That's my trend line right there. And again, I can double click on the trend line and also turn on an alert. If I hold the trend line with my mouse button, if I click and hold, you get a lot of information about that line that you just drew. You get the price where the trend line begins, the price where the trend line ends. Not only that, but you also get the angle, the net change between those 2 points that you drew, and also the percent change between those 2 points. So sometimes if you're looking to measure one point to another, you can use a trend line and click on the first point and click on the second point, and it will tell you exactly what the measurements are between those 2 points, which I think it's very convenient. Some of the drawing tools here on TradeStation require more than 1 or 2 clicks. For example, if you have the Fibonacci retracement lines, let's say we want to do the Fibonacci extension lines. So I click on that tool. This is one of tool that requires 3 different clicks. let's say that I'm measuring this peak of Apple right here. And I'm measuring, I just clicked there. You see how my line is following my cursor. And I'm measuring all the way down to this low right here. And that creates my Fibonacci lines that I can just anchor to any bar, maybe starting on this high right here. And that draws those lines, which are the Fibonacci price extension lines on my chart. The same way that we turned on alerts for the horizontal and the trend line, we can turn on alerts on those drawing tools as well. So if I go to the drawing menu, okay, we have an option here to remove drawing objects. You can remove all. I can select all and remove everything on the chart, click OK, and then my chart is clear from all the different drawing tools. Let's talk a little bit about adding studies and enabling alerts. All the studies, anything in the analysis techniques world, like MACD, Bollinger Bands, RSI, everything is going to be available right here from the studies toolbar button. And I can just click on Add Study from this drop-down, and it'll take me to a list of everything that's built into the platform. One thing that I wanted to point out is that you're not limited to what's built into the platform. You can bring in custom indicators from different sources, like the Easy Language library or a third party, or even write indicators by yourself. I'm going to go to the Indicator tab, and I'm going to use a popular indicator called the Bollinger Bands. All right, here it is. I'll click OK, and the Bollinger Bands go right on my chart. I didn't have to supply any parameters. Every indicator in TradeStation has default parameters, and you can just insert them on the screen. But if you really wanted to change the parameters, you can. And every indicator is open for you to customize it and have it look and behave the way you want. For example, if you're familiar with the Bollinger Bands, and I'll just give you a brief explanation of what this indicator is doing. The gray line that you see right there in the middle is just a simple moving average. And then it's going to be calculating standard deviations above and standard deviations below of that average. Most of the pricing points, or most of the prices of the symbol that you're plotting, will be inside the channel. To be more specific, 95% of all the data points will be within the channel, but sometimes you get these anomalies where the price goes either above the blue band or we have below the red band, so it gets outside of the channel. And those are the opportunities that the Bollinger Band is trying to highlight, because whenever it reaches those extremes, it is said that the price activity will return to its normal price activity. So if it goes to the extreme on the downside, it's expected for the price to go up in the opposite direction. And if it penetrates the upper band, it is expected for the price to come down from that level because it's reached an extreme. All right, so let's take a look. Let's say that we wanted to change the number of standard deviations, which by default is 2. Remember that I told you that you could double-click on the candles to customize the symbol, in this case Apple? Well, the same happens with any indicator that you insert on a chart. You can double-click on the line, and there's 2 tabs that I want you guys to pay attention to. The Inputs tab, which allows you to pretty much change all the parameters of the Bollinger Bands, including the number of standard deviations. Notice that here we have 2 for the upper band and -2 for the lower band. I can say, I want to use 1.5 instead of 2. And you can do that right in there, typing it in. And then maybe for the length, instead of 20, I want to create a 50-bar moving average. And then click OK. And you can see that as soon as I typed in my parameters, the moving average changed because it's using different calculation parameters. I can double-click on the lines again of the Bollinger Band, and I can come here to the Alerts tab and enable the alert. Every indicator has built-in alert criteria, and it's just a matter of you going in there and turning it on and It'll alert you whenever the criteria is met. Alerts by default are turned off. So if you want an indicator to give you an alert of something happening, you have to go in there and turn it on. All right, so now I've turned on the alert for the moving average. If you're familiar with the average, or the Bollinger Band, I'm sorry, whenever it's outside of the channel, like right now, it's outside of the channel, it's going to wait until it goes inside the channel to give you an alert, which means that it was at an extreme, but now it's returning to its normal state, so inside the channel. And that's what the alert criteria does. Right? I'm going to go ahead and format this indicator one more time so that I can change the inputs back to default, which is 2 standard deviations above and below, and it's a 20-bar moving average. And you can also turn on the alert. This applies to all analysis techniques. For example, let me show you another one. I'm going to go here to my studies, add study. And I'm going to scroll down until I see volume average. All right, where's volume average? Here it is. I'll click OK. All right, that's my volume average indicator. You can see how the volume bars are red and blue. So this is a specific type of analysis technique. It's color coding the lines based on where the closing price is. So if you look at the closing price of the bars, every time that the closing price is lower, the volume is red, and every time that the closing is higher, the volume is blue. Not only that, but you can also see this yellow line, which is the average. The average number of shares traded for Apple is about 29.9 or 30 million shares traded every single day. Right now, we are at 64, so you can see that today's volume is higher, much higher than the average. Now, if I double-click on any of the lines of my volume indicator, it'll take me to the customized indicator volume average. And there are a couple of things that I can change. First, I can change the length. Notice that it's averaging 50 days. If you want to average less than that, let's say that we want to average 25 days, and then click OK, you can see how the average changes from 29 to 32. There's been a lot of trading activity for Apple recently, so if we shorten the number of days being used, it's going to create a higher average. But let's do something else. Let's double click on the line here, and there's an alert percentage. This is what controls the criteria of the alert. Any bar that exceeds the average by 50%, you're going to be alerted on. Now, you can change the percentage if you want to, but if I go to the alerts and I turn on the alert here and I click OK, if the volume is exceeded, or if the volume exceeds the average by a 50%, I'm going to be alerted, which is a great way of looking at the indicator. So every indicator that you use here, let me go back here to studies and add a study. All these indicators that you see listed here, you can just click on, and then click on definition. Over here, there's a definition button once you highlight at least one. And when you go to definition, it'll bring up the TradeStation help files letting you know how the indicator works, how it's formatted, and how the alert criteria works. So make sure that if you're not familiar with a particular indicator, you highlight it, click on definition, and it'll take you to the help files as you can see here. Perfect. I see your question, Money, about average true range. There's an indicator right here in TradeStation, if you go to studies and add studies, that it's called average true range. So you can add it to your chart if you'd like. Here it is, average true range, and I can add it. And average true range, as you can see right here at the bottom, for Apple at the moment is 3.20. $3.20 is the average true range for the past 14 trading days. That's the inputs of this indicator. But if I want to format it, I can double click on it, go to inputs, and I want the ATR length to be 7 trading days instead. If I click OK, it'll calculate again, and for the last 7 days, it's been $3.54, and you can leave that indicator on the chart as well. There's a couple things that you can do. If you have the chart filled up with a lot of technical indicators, you can come here to Studies, and you can click on Add Study Group. Groups are just collections of analysis techniques that you can insert very quickly. And sometimes it's going to save you time when you are creating charts. So if I add a study group, let's do it differently. Let me go to studies, and instead of add study group, we're going to go to save study group. I'm sorry, I took you to the wrong menu. Save study group. You can see that this has the average true range, the Bollinger Bands, and the volume average. I'm going to call this my group, and then click OK. So if I go to a different workspace and I click on chart analysis, see how the chart comes up blank? But if I go to the studies, I can say add a study group, and I can say add my group. In fact, you can make it a default analysis group right here so that every time you create a chart, it has that same group of analysis techniques. But when I click OK, you can see how the 3 indicators are added to my screen very quickly. So that's going to save you a lot of time if you do a lot of technical analysis. In fact, if you go here to studies, we have some groups that are already created. Let's say we want to do a Keltner channel and momentum. I just highlight that group, click OK, and it's going to replace whatever analysis techniques I have right there on the chart. Multi-data chart analysis. In TradeStation, let me go back here to my chart. And let me clean the chart. To delete indicators, to remove indicators, it's very simple to do. Just click on the line, and when you see the white dots appear on the chart, just press delete, and that removes the indicator if you want to clear the chart. TradeStation allows you to do multi-data chart analysis. In this case, I have Apple on the screen, right? I can insert an additional data stream. So if I go to data, and I can add a symbol. If I go to add symbol, and I say, I'm going to add $INDU, which is the Dow Jones Industrial, and plot it. So now, not only do I have the Apple price activity at the top, but I also have the chart down here. I have the Dow Jones. You can see the price scale right here on the right. We're down to 25,650. Now, there's a divider right here in the middle of the chart that allows me to resize these panels so that you can, make it look better for you. And I'm pressing the up arrow key to expand or the down arrow key to contract. If I go to my studies, you're going to find that some studies require multiple data streams. And I'll show you a few. Oh, just one. Let's say that we have spread ratio and spread diff. The difference and the ratio are 2 types of indicators that is going to do a mathematical formula between 2 symbols. It's either going to subtract one from the other or divide one into the other. So that's one is the difference and the other one is the ratio. If you want to read more about it, just go to the definition. And the ratio right here is a ratio of prices of 2 markets. But if I insert the ratio and I click OK, the line that you see right there at the bottom is dividing one by the other, and you can see the calculation right here. But some of these indicators use multiple data, and the way that you build these charts is by going to the data button and click on add symbol. Let's go ahead and show you something else. Once you have these symbols on the screen, you can also create a type of chart that's called relative performance. When you go to style, there's something called percent change chart where I can enable. This pretty much takes both symbols. I'm going to scroll all the way to the back, and it makes them start at the same level. The dotted line you see here, that's my 0%, and it's going to calculate the movement of each one of these symbols using a percentage. If I go to the very front, I can see how much these symbols have changed in the past 2 years. How do I know it's 2 years? But if I scroll back and you click and hold and go all the way to the very first data point, look at the date at the very top of this window. It says February 2nd, 2016. So we have 2 years of movement right here. And we can see how the green line, and if you look at the green line, it corresponds to Apple, which is green right here, and the orange corresponds to the Dow Jones. Apple is up 71%, and the Dow Jones is up 58% since 2 years ago. It's interesting that here on the line where 2017 begins, that's where my pointer is, I can right-click on this axis, go to, so we go to Style, Percent Change Chart, and we say Calculate from this bar. So if you want to know the percent change from the beginning of the year 2017, notice how now the two lines meet at 0 where the year 2017 is, and we can see the percent change from the beginning of the year. Actually, we want to do it from the beginning of 2018. So that's 2018 right here. So we're going to right click, go to Style, go to Percent Change Chart, and say Calculate from this bar. So now they all meet at 2018, and you can see that the Dow Jones is up 3%, and Apple, since the beginning of the year, is down 5%. So you can create these types of analysis by creating multi-data charts. Also, one thing that I like to do when I have this type of chart open, let me just resize it. And I also like to have a quotes window on the side. So let me open up Radar Screen because I think it makes sense to analyze different stocks against the Dow Jones. So I'm going to open up Radar Screen. All right, I'm going to put it right here on the side. And I'm going to insert, let's start with the NASDAQ 100. Okay, these are the 100 symbols that make up the NASDAQ. And I'm going to link the two windows together. So I can click on, for example, Adobe. And it loads Adobe right here on this chart. Notice how it says Adobe, and it's comparing it to the Dow Jones. The Dow Jones is up 3% from the beginning of the year. Adobe is up 10%. And you can see by using this methodology which stocks are outperforming the index or underperforming. If I look at Amazon, Amazon is outperforming. If I look at, for example, Costco, Costco is underperforming the Dow Jones. So it's a great comparison tool if you're interested in relative performance. Let's backtest some strategy components. I'm going to open up a new chart and show you a little bit about strategy testing. I'm going to start off with a new chart. I don't need that drawing tool on the left-hand side, so I'm going to get rid of it. And this is just to review. I'm going to click on the drop-down at the very end of the toolbar, and I'm going to select Customize. And I'm just going to go to Toolbars and uncheck my Chart Drawing Toolbar. Apply, and you can see how the toolbar goes away. I'm going to change the time frame to a daily, and I'm going to add a study that I just talked about just a minute ago, which is the Bollinger Band. All right. Here it is. Okay. So if you were here while I was explaining the concept of the Bollinger Band, whenever the price activity goes under the red, like over here, we can see how it closed below the red, and it goes inside the channel. So from outside, it goes inside. That's a trading signal because it assumes that the price activity is going to go in that same direction. The same happens, for example, when it reaches an extreme, like over here on the current, data. You see where the closing prices were above the blue band, and then the price goes under it or inside the channel. That's a trading signal as well, thinking that the price will continue on that same direction. So ideally, if you think about a strategy or a trading strategy, what we want to do is we want to go short when this scenario happens where it penetrates the upper band and then it comes back into the channel, and we want to take a long trade when the opposite happens. So if it penetrates the bottom band and then it comes back inside, we want to take a long trade thinking that the price will go in that same direction. That is the concept of strategy trading. If we have a mechanism where the chart enters a signal every time that that condition or that criteria is met, we could have a way of measuring that idea as in performance. So let's go ahead and insert one of the components that is built into the platform that is based on Bollinger Bands. I'm going to go here to Studies, And the same way that you have add study, we have something called add strategy. So we can go there and we can add some of the strategy components that are built into the platform. You can see that there's one for the Bollinger Bands. In fact, there's two. One is labeled LE and the other is labeled SE, because these are components on either side, on the long side and the short side. So LE is for the long entry and SE is for the short entry. So I'm going to select these two strategies and put them on the chart. I'm not going to make any formatting. I'm just going to use them the way they come, and I'm just going to click OK. When you put a strategy on the chart, you're going to see red arrows. The blue arrows are my long entry. So if you see over here, the price activity penetrated the red band, and when it returned, I have a long trade. And over here, I have a short trade because the price went beyond the blue, then came back inside, and we have a short trade. If you're asking yourself, why isn't it generating trades in all these other occasions where there was a penetration? The reason for that is because we are already in a short trade, and strategies by default only take one trade in one direction at a time. But if you wanted to take a trade every time that the criteria is met, you could do that. But before I do that, let me just take a look at what happened on this chart. So if I scroll back, I can see every single time the strategy would have generated a trade. Let me close the chart a little bit so we can see more. And you can also see how the trades are connected with a dotted line. So every time you see a blue dotted line, that means that it's a profitable trade. Here, we have one single trade that took a long time to develop, and it's a losing trade because the line is red. So if we were just to follow the trading concept of the Bollinger Band, we would be flipping back and forth between a long trade and a short trade, which we call a reversal strategy. This is the type of strategy where you're always in a trade. And we can see that happen here. Here we're long, and it keeps long all these days until it goes short right here, and then it keeps that trade all the way over here when it decides to go long. With a strategy on the chart, we can bring up something called the strategy performance report. Let's go over here to data. And first of all, you have to add the strategy components, but now I can load up what is called a strategy performance report. And I'll point out to a few things here that you can read on the report. The report comes up. You have a detailed report which has some additional calculations. You can click on this collapse button to give you a more summarized view, or you can just expand to see the details. So use the button over here. And you also have tabs at the bottom that give you a performance summary, a trade analysis, your periodical returns, performance graphs, and so forth. But here you see the total net profit. So in 2 years, this strategy generated about $3,712 for Costco. This is Costco. And we can see the date range right here from February 2nd, 2016 to February 2nd, 2018. So if we had traded the Bollinger Band strategy for the past 2 years on Costco and followed every single trade, we would have generated $3,712 in a total of 7 trades, which is not many trades for a 2-year period. But again, this is not giving you an ideal strategy because this is an incomplete strategy, but it's just a starting point where you start taking strategy components and try to test them against historical data. Let's go ahead and take a look at some other things that you can do. By the way, if I go to my performance graphs, this is my equity curve line. You can see that we have the 7 trades right here at the bottom. So my equity is fluctuating. Every time that I see a green dot, that means a new equity peak. So you can have those graphs to analyze your performance. Now let's go ahead and make some changes to the strategy. I did talk about the strategy not trading again until it goes into the opposite side. But I can format the strategy. Let me go over here to my studies, go to edit strategies, You have the list of the 2 strategies you have there. And I do encourage everyone to come here to this button that says Properties for All, because you'll find a lot of information or a lot of settings that you can add to the strategy to make it more realistic. For example, you need to add the commission cost. You see, by default, the commission cost is $0, and we know that that's not true. So you have to put in how much does it cost you to trade each time you trade Costco at 100 shares. You also have the trade size, how many shares you're trading. You see, by default, it selects 100 shares, but you can increase it as well. You can use a dollar amount if you want to do that as well. And you have position limits, which is for pyramiding. This is what allows a strategy to take more trades in the same direction. So if I turn this on and I say take 5 more trades in the same direction, and I click OK, you can see that. Take a look at what's happening here. Over here, it generated a short trade. Then we have a second trade because the criteria was met. Then we have a third trade, and we have a fourth trade. In fact, we have a 5th trade down here. We don't see it. Let me show you one tool that you can use, which is background dragging. I can click it, and then it turns my cursor into a hand. And you can see that we have the 5th trade right here and a total of 500 shares short. So by turning that on, you're adding more trading activity to the chart. Does that make the strategy better or worse? We don't know. Let's go ahead and take a look at the report again. I'm going to go to Data, Strategy Performance Report. And you can see how our total net profit went from $3,000 up to $13,000. So in this particular example, adding those pyramiding trades did work. Now instead of having 7 trades, we have 17 trades. So interesting ways in which you can format the chart. Let's go ahead and do one more thing. I'm going to come over here to my studies and add a 3rd strategy. And it's just going to be a simple stop loss. Okay, I'm going to come here to my stop loss, click OK. And for my stop loss, I'm going to customize the stop loss. I'm going to click on Customize right here on the right and set the amount to, let's say, $500. Every time a trade loses $500, it's going to generate that stop. Let's see what happens now. I'm going to click OK and close. So some trades, for example, right here, you see how it generated a short trade and then it stopped it because the price, instead of going down, it went up. Same thing happened here. It went in a short trade and then it generated the stop loss because the price went up. So we see the stop loss kicking in multiple times. How did that affect the strategy? Let's go to Data. Click on Strategy Performance Report, and the summary, you see how the total net profit went from $13,000 down. Maybe our stop is a little too tight, and it's generating more losing trades than we want. But there's a lot of information here that allows you to test a strategy and take it to another level. One quick thing that I want to show you, which is optimization. The stop loss. Let me go here and format strategy. The stop loss, I picked an arbitrary 500, but let me customize that. Let me highlight the 500, and I know that I'm going at a faster pace, but I do want to show you this feature that is part of the whole charting package. I can click on Optimize, and I can tell TradeStation to test from 25 all the way to $2,000 in increments of 25. So it's going to test a stop loss of 25, 50, 75, all the way to 2,000, and tell me which one would have been an optimal testing value. Let me click on Optimize. The chart will do all the testing in the background, and it'll come back with the ideal stop loss. If I go back to Format Strategies, you can see how the stop loss ideal value was $1,900. So it wasn't 500 like I originally had it. It does select the optimal value of 1900. And if I go back to my data and look at my strategy performance report, you can see how that affects the report that I have on the screen. Now, having a stop loss or a profit target or risk management tools, so the fact that I gave back some of my profit doesn't necessarily mean that it made a bad strategy, but maybe it's made the strategy tradable because now I have safeties in place that would protect me if the market goes against me. So that's in a nutshell what strategy testing does. You can use strategy components that are in TradeStation, or you can build your own. Every TradeStation user has access to our programming language so that you can build your strategies. And the same tools that I just showed you right now are available to custom strategies as well. So you can build a strategy based on components that are, general knowledge like Bollinger Bands, and then add a MACD, and then add an RSI, all these components together and build a strategy of your own. So we've talked a lot about strategies today. We talked about how to enter a symbol and how to change the time frame and load historical data. We talked about drawing tools and how to draw on the chart. We drew a trend line, we drew a horizontal line, we looked at some Fibonacci price retracement lines as well, and we showed you how to turn on the alerts of those lines, and not only the lines, but we also turned on alerts on indicators. So indicators or analysis techniques can also be added, and you can enable alerts there as well. We touched up a little bit on multi-data analysis. If you remember, we looked at this workspace where we have multiple symbols in one chart, and we can create relative performance, which I think it's a great concept. And then we jumped over to strategy components and how you can test an idea against historical data. But I want to say thank you, everyone, for your time. Thank you, everyone, for being here, and I hope to see you in a future event right at TradeStation. Bye-bye, everyone.